what else can you add to that other places where most organizations might misunderstand, how to do culture change?
The leadership of the company needs to create almost a culture of professional 4-year-olds, and curious, questioning 4-year-olds. You have to have a culture of people that are willing to celebrate a success for a little bit and then look at each other, say, okay, what else?
And we need a culture where all of our teams are able to spot opportunities for improvement. And we need all of our teams to be able to have those skills to come up with better ways, because that's lean, right? That's continuous improvement, where we have all of our teams doing this.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. My name is Shane, one of your co-hosts, and we have the lovely Catherine joining me today. Very excited to have you here. Hello, Catherine.
Hi, Shane. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I am doing well. I have a quick question for you as we get started. Just kind of beyond that, how are you doing today? But what is a fun experience you've had recently?
A fun experience. Oh, do you know what? I have been loving playing my GAA. So for anybody who's not in Ireland who doesn't understand what that is, it's the Gaelic Athletic Association. So it's a bit like, for anybody who's never heard of it, it's a bit like soccer, except we pick up the ball and we run and we solo it on our foot. So we hit the ball off the foot and catch it back in our hands, right? So I play GAA with an over 40s team, and it's a lot of fun. It's non-competitive, but we play other teams and we have kind of like a bit of a social club within the sports club. So I've been absolutely loving getting out and about in the kind of the summer months. It's just lovely, and they're a great group. So that's what I do for fun every Tuesday night, Shane.
I love that. I did not know this. Ladies and gentlemen, this is breaking news for our podcast audience. No, I did not know that. I'm going to go a little bit, you went personal. I'm going to go a little bit professional. Something that has been a fun experience for me recently is working with a brand new team on a improvement project. And what I've loved to do is gathering. Right now I'm in the process of gathering voice of the customer, talking to the people, interviewing them about what their experience with the process is. And it's been great fun in hearing them kind of describe the process, but also by the end, after they have felt like they've been listened to and affirmed in what they're doing, they're getting super excited about the process as well, about the project, about finding the improvement. So that's always fun to see people kind of catch that excitement when it comes to being able to improve the great work they're already doing. But can we make it better? I think so. So that's been super fun.
Aren't you lucky, Shane, to actually, see your work as fun? How many people get to say that they see their work as fun? That's right. Just such a great thing for you. I'm delighted for you. Well done on the new job as well. Well done.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Very excited about it. Today, it kind of like transitioning into the topic for today is leading the change, innovation, culture, and the lean leader's mindset. And when I was looking at that topic here, preparing for this, I really appreciated that, because what that told me is the concept of change equals innovation plus culture. And without those two things, you're going to have a really hard time. We talk a lot about managing change and, bringing that up and how we can make change happen. But until we understand that change includes not just innovation, but it also includes culture, because change is all about people and the respect for people, then I think we may miss really the impact and the bigger effect that change can have. So tell us a little bit about the guest we have. I'm very excited about this. And I will start off with saying he is undoubtedly the smartest man in this room. Tell us about it.
I would be delighted to. So our guest today is Daniel Walker. So Dr. Walker has been developing his skills in problem solving, innovation, and culture change for several decades. He is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt. He holds a BS in Plastics Engineering Technology, an MS in Management, Strategy and Leadership, and a PhD in Business Management. His doctoral research focused on organizational change and innovation, which is the topic we're going to be talking about today.
Yes.
And he has a real passion for facilitating the learning process, focusing on leadership development and cultural innovation. So welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you. Very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation. It's always fun to talk to like-minded people, and also have some conversation, with your audience about, some of the areas. And if, from my perspective, if your audience picks up one or two key thoughts or mind-changing ideas, right, I'll consider the time successful.
No, it's great to have you here, and I'm so sure that they will. So I just have a question, Daniel, just to start us off. Your PhD, your research, it sounds so interesting. I would have had a background in all that area as well, organizational behavior, organizational change. And I'm dying to know, what is your research on, and what did it show?
Well, what I found in prepping for dissertation research, one of the main steps is you got to go into the current literature. I'm going to get a little academic and boring here, but you go into the current research space and spend a lot of time looking for what are called gaps in the research, right? After looking through all the research on change, innovation, it was more in the area of psychological empowerment. Kind of the area I got into. I discovered a very significant gap in the research on middle management, right? A lot of research on executives, a lot of research on frontline workers, ton of stuff, but very little research in this space in middle management. Well, in the world of lean transformation, one of the main groups we're working with is that middle management team, because they're the ones that are going to actually guide the execution of these projects. Right. So what my research really demonstrated is there are good and bad ways to empower, bring into a process and bring into a conversation and empower middle managers in a way that gives them confidence to make changes of their own, change the organization, and then take the risk of innovation, right? Because within change and innovation, there's always some risk that we're going to get it wrong. And what I found is that when executives have a culture of that creates a safe space for that middle management team to experiment with and do a trial and do the things that are needed to be done to make innovations and change, but also in a safe enough space where they know they're not going to effectively lose their job if something doesn't go right. They become a lot more bold in actually making driving the change. Relative to the lean environment, I appreciate you sharing your information, in the intro and all that about voice of the customer is a great topic. That's where I cut my teeth in Six Sigma. Sure. Voice of the customer. But what you have to understand, a good friend of mine, Dean, that I've known for a lot of years, really shared with me in a manufacturing environment. He shared with me a very simple observation. He's a brilliant guy. Simple observation. He says, when you think about a manufacturing operation, if it's not running on the weekend, how much money is it making? $0. Right. Okay. He said, what's the only variable that has changed between the weekday and the weekend? And that's people.
The people, yeah.
The people. And that was a revelation he helped me discover many years ago, where I thought, okay, this is something that's kind of, in a roundabout way, kind of led me through my dissertation research. And that is like, if you don't have good leadership for people, it doesn't matter what kind of lean transformation you're trying to do, it's probably going to fail. We've all seen it. You'll get the initial reaction to a Kaizen event or something, is where people can say, oh yeah, I see the problem. Yep, I can see the weakness. I see the inefficiency. Somebody needs to fix that. Right. As soon as you hear somebody, it's done.
Wah, wah.
Yeah. So what we're, so where the research really showed me is involving people, a lot of lean experts know, you involve the practitioners and the middle management in the development of the understanding of what's going on. You bring them into that project early enough that they essentially buy into it, right? So, they develop they understand the problem, they develop the solution, they own it. And then again, setting up the leadership organization so that when it comes time to actually take the risk of making the changes that are necessary, they're willing to do that, take that risk, and go through, the agile methodology that they need to continually, just keep refining and refining. So a long-winded answer to a very short question.
No,
I appreciate that. And one of the things that I really appreciated having you on, Dan, and having the scholarship that you have done, how recent would you say, because you talked about your research and doing PhD is looking at the research and trying to find gaps and then pursuing those gaps to get a more complete picture.
Right.
How the things you're talking about, they make sense to me. They make sense to Catherine. Like that's how I was trained as well. Yeah. Where in our adoption of lean and kind of like bringing that up to the forefront, where did the things you just mentioned with thinking of the people, where did that start coming in? How new or old is that?
In the world of lean, I don't know how new or old that is. I will tell you this: I was trained in the DMAIC methodology many years ago. That was 2000. I was certified in 2005, so I think my training was probably in 2003. I know in that environment, it was with a company I worked for. The first of 5 weeks of training, the very first week was dedicated completely to leadership.
Interesting. So not tools, not how you can make things better, but who you are.
What that organization understood was we as Six Sigma people have zero power, right? We can't hire, fire. We have zero direct power.
Okay.
All we have is the ability to influence people's behaviors. And the other thing that Six Sigma people do in some regards is kind of like being a consultant. I heard this about consultants years ago. Consultants are actually paid to tell the companies that hire them that their baby is ugly. And as Six Sigma people, as lean people, that's pretty much, we have to help the people we're working with understand that what they're doing is not as efficient as it could be. It has defects. But we can't directly change it for a number of reasons. Number one, we don't have positional authority typically. Number two, we can't be there all the time.
Right. Yep.
Right. And quite frankly, the teams we work with outnumber us. There's more of them than us, so we can't eat. There's really no way for us to effectively make the changes. So what the leadership training I received, which kind of got me really going on this whole path, it really made sure that we understood that if we don't develop the leadership skills to truly influence the people that we're working with, we're ultimately going to just generate a lot of 80-page 80-slide PowerPoint slides that never get looked at after we deliver the report.
Right.
So I will say in the round before the 1980s, going back to the academic thing, prior to the 1980s, transactional leadership was a very common way of doing things, and that goes back into the 1800s. Transactional leadership, obviously, you do work, I pay you. You don't do work, I fire you. Everything is. The idea in the 80s and 90s started to move towards what's called transformational leadership. Where empowering leadership is a derivation of that, but transformational leadership really comes from the perspective I, as the leader, need to first focus on correcting and adjusting whatever's preventing me from leading, and then that gives me the chance to inspire others to go on this journey, right? So that maybe my training might have just kind of fallen into that pattern. In hindsight, a lot of it was transformational.
I think it's great. It sounds great. I mean, I think I've said before, well, definitely somewhere else. I'm not sure if I've said it on the podcast, but there's a lot of courses out there that you go in to learn lean or agile, and you come out the other end and you could have spent 3, 6, 9 months, a year learning about the lean tools, what lean is, but never actually have looked at your own leadership or looked at anything to do with yourself. It's all about what lean is, but it's removed from yourself as a leader, which, I mean, maybe some of the assignments touch on it, but definitely it's not prioritized enough. And I'm hoping that's changing, but I really like your story there. I think it's the right way. It's most definitely the right. I always say the belts are backwards. You have to get to the black belt before you start doing leadership. And we work up through the belts on, you know, white belt, yellow belt, green belt, and we barely touch on leadership. They're backwards, honestly.
It was about a year after I got my my certification as a black belt that I finally kind of clicked exactly what it was that Lean and Six Sigma and all this is. Because a lot of people look at it as a whole bunch of tools. You just do the tools and things miraculously change. What I found, and I've shared it with a lot of Six Sigma people, and nobody's argued me out of it yet. Maybe you two will. Six Sigma is more of a philosophical approach to things rather than a bunch of tools, right? It's a philosophical approach to things backed up by all the tools necessary to execute the philosophical approach. The philosophical approach, as I see it, is if the customer's not writing checks for it, don't do it.
Huh. Okay, simple.
I like simple. From a lean perspective, if we are doing things the customer is not paying for, we need to find out how to stop doing that. Okay, so I'm going to tie it into your VOC. If we're doing more than the customer expects, they're going to take it, but they're not compensating us for it. So overproducing, oversupplying their need is almost as bad as undersupplying. So where the voice of the customer, I'm glad you brought that up in the beginning, because that's a topic I love. What the voice of the customer does is it allows us an opportunity to better understand what the customer need is. And then we developed a solution that meets that need. Number one, they have to buy it because it solves their problem. And number two, we don't deliver more or less than they need. Well, the reason we over deliver in a lot of cases is we don't have good voice of the customer. We don't have a good understanding of what we're solving. I can bring the same philosophical approach into the plant, in the manufacturing plant, from a lean perspective, right? What does this process really need, right? What are the absolute 100%, you know, and the more better we understand the needs of the process, or the voice of the process, VOP, you know, the voice of the process, the better we can tailor the how we handle that process to meet just the needs of the process. And then we can eliminate a lot of the waste and excess production and all that.
Yeah, that's I think that matches, I don't know, Shane, about you, but it matches what I understand about lean as well, in terms of the importance of the voice of the customer in everything. And it has to come into every single conversation when it comes to value adding and waste and all of that. So very, very relevant. Can we go back just to the whole idea of innovation and culture? Because I know they're your specialty areas, Dan. And I'm actually I really want to get more into this topic on innovation and culture and the lean leaders mindset. We're already talking a little bit about lean here and we're diving into that, but just let's go backwards a bit. I want to understand the whole area of innovation, because when in lean, I don't know if Six Sigma is similar. I wouldn't do a lot of Six Sigma, but I would use DMAIC. I know that's more of a Six Sigma tool. But we often talk about problems and problem solving more than we do innovation. And I know with problem solving, obviously, it's about coming up with, you know, solutions in an innovative way. But do you think there's a difference between innovation and problem solving? And is that important?
The link that I could draw between them, because they are unique, you know, they are unique in certain respects. Problem solving requires a deep understanding of the root of the problem, right? Root cause. And once a root cause is understood, the problem is typical, you know, that defines the problem, then the solution to the problem quite often is pretty obvious. Sometimes it's not. right? So the way I think I could tie innovation and problem solving together is sometimes the solution is going to require some level of innovation to actually respond to it. And again, that's where it goes back to really, I'm going to keep going back to that because it's a passion. That's where the leadership skills are going to really come in on the lean practitioners, because if innovation is required, there's a whole nother set of processes you'd have to follow in order to create that innovation.
Okay.
Right. And in part of that, it's helping people not forget, but put aside some of the conventional ways they've been doing things. Again, that's very scary, right? Innovation means number one, I have to acknowledge the way I'm doing it isn't optimum. Okay. And then also, again, as I was talking before, we have to take the risk of innovating something new in order to solve the problem. So that I could draw that connection between problem solving and innovation.
That's really great, because I think we're linked. What we're doing here again is we're going further into our topic, and we're not just looking at innovation. Remember, we're looking at innovation and culture and the lean leader's mindset. So I'm still going to keep leadership on the outskirts here for a minute, because I think that's going to form so much of our discussion in this session. Just on innovation and culture, I want to make sure I understand it and the listeners understand it. So what we need to be a lean, agile organization, we need, let's say, a culture that supports the, let's say, pausing to understand an issue, the ability within our people to see problems, but not just that, to actually come up with understand the problem, come up with solutions to that problem. That's the innovation piece. So we need almost whole teams, and we need a culture where all of our teams are able to spot opportunities for improvement, bearing in mind the voice of the customer, what the customer wants. And we need all of our teams to be able to have those skills to come up with better ways, because that's lean, right? That's continuous improvement, where we have all of our teams doing this. So is this where, am I missing anything? Is this where innovation and culture, and obviously the leader's role in all of this, but is that what we're looking for when we talk about the culture that supports lean and agile and Six Sigma and all of these things?
Yeah, in a sense, you almost need, the leadership of the company needs to create almost a culture of professional 4-year-olds. Curious, questioning 4-year-olds, and excuse me, to a certain respect, a whole bunch of people that are never truly happy with the way things are. You have to have a culture of people that are willing to celebrate a success for a little bit, and then look at each other without leadership prompting, right? To look at each other and say, okay, what else? What's next? Right. And that also takes a tremendous amount of humility on the part of the team to acknowledge no matter how good we did, it's still not optimized. Right. It could be better. It could be better. Now, at a certain point, the point of diminishing returns does come into the conversation. So that, I would prefer to have an organization where the leader would actually come back to the team at some point and say, move on to something else, because any new innovation or optimization of this is likely going to cost more than the actual cost of this wasteful process, right? So I'd almost rather have a leadership culture that had to throttle back enthusiasm for change and redirect it. You can't stop it, but redirect it. And again, that's where that leadership of the culture of the leadership is. The leaders are the ones that are going to kind of keep a really high level view of what's happening in the organization, because the practitioners are in their own little area of specialty, and they're only going to see that pretty much. So then the leaders are going to be able to pull that team back at some point and say, good enough for now. Here's another hot spot. Go there.
So I love how you brought up, hey, this is a place that just be aware. This could be a pitfall or some place to be aware. What else can you add to that other places where most organizations might misunderstand, how to do culture change, or how to manage that, instead of just going full throttle with one thing and then, like you said, point of diminishing returns. But are there other pitfalls or misunderstandings when it comes to culture change?
If you can tolerate a little bit of an extended illustration, this is one I've used in several different settings. This will be, I think, only the second time I've used it publicly in a larger setting. And the illustration, and I like to make illustrations in something that doesn't appear to be related to it, just a way of illustrating. Okay. So in the world of rockets, the traditional rocket we see is a chemical rocket. It loaded up with fuel, they light the fuse, and it burns typically 9 minutes or so, and it's out of fuel. And that rocket is going to just coast, typically until it, forever, once it gets out in space. What that means is they need to accelerate that vehicle from 0 to whatever speed it needs to get to in 9 minutes or less in order to get it wherever they want to take it, right? A lot of G's, right? Very noticeable. A lot of people on the rocket are going to notice it. There's another propulsion technology that was actually invented in the 50s and 60s, but it's starting to gain some popularity, called the ion drive. And what the ion drive does, you still have to get it into space with a chemical rocket, but once an ion drive is in orbit, in space, it uses typically xenon gas as a fuel and an electric exciter motor that drives those xenon atoms out the back of the rocket at very high speeds, very low pressure, very low force, but over a very long period of time. Newton's laws of conservation of energy, of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, which means if you're accelerating xenon atoms, very light, very low pressure, at 100,000 miles an hour out one end of a vehicle, if you do that long enough, at some point that can be going 100,000 miles in that direction. The key on that one, I'll tie it together here in a second. The key on that is the amount of force that is felt on the rocket is in the matter of grams, typically, like paperclip, right? If somebody's on that rocket and they would not even notice the acceleration until they were going really fast and they had a frame of reference. By the time they noticed they were going 100,000 miles per hour, stopping and turning around and coming back would be painful. But it takes a very long time. It could be for months it would take to reach that. The approach I used in the last company I worked for, because it needed some culture change, was very similar to that. I knew that if I walked into a situation, and this is for your lean practitioners, if I walked into a situation like a chemical rocket and I hit the culture really hard, really fast, we got to change, I knew I was going to get a lot of resistance to that because people would feel the change. But I knew that if I applied gentle, quiet, constant, consistent pressure over a very long period of time, the culture change was going to happen before they noticed it, or it was too late when they noticed it.
Sure.
Case in point, one of the first employees I worked with there, after about 5 years of using this technique, after about 5 years, he finally caught up with me one day and said, something's different, and I don't know what.
Dan, can you give us an example of something you did to change a culture using that approach? That might help our listeners more.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. So one of the things we knew when I walked into the company, it was a small 35 or so employee company. It was growing. The owners knew they were going to grow out of their capability to run it as owners. So we had to convert it to a professionally managed organization. So one of the first things we did, we had to basically document the business processes at a high level, right? So we started just documenting, and we utilized the people that were doing the project, doing the work. We talked to them and had them involved in developing the process documents, with an understanding that this document is never going to be done, right? We're just going to, at some point, you got to publish it, but we'll change it. So we started with, really basic with, it ended up being what we called the 5-phase process, whereas, from the time the customer contacts to ship the last part, everything in between on a macro scale. And then we started developing sub processes that, help support that. So had I just gone in and written down the process and presented it to them, that's the chemical rocket, right? It would have been quick. I could have done it in a matter of a couple of weeks, and it had so much resistance, it never would have happened. It took us several years to really get that, those base process documents really well defined and in place. It took us several years to get that in place. It took us almost 8 or 9 years to get all the business processes documented in place. But because we used that method where the practitioners, the users of the process were defining it, I was just documenting it, right? I was just writing the words. It gave them a chance to absorb the change that was naturally going to come through that at a rate that they were able to accept it without significant resistance.
I think the rocket example is great there, because in my mind, and I actually saw a rocket go up once in Miami. It was very interesting. It goes really, really slow to begin with, doesn't it? And it's as in not really slow, but it goes a lot slower when it's lifting up off the ground than when it does when it's out in space. And I think your points here in terms of bringing people in, and especially not seeking perfection, seeking progress. Let's see what we can get done. Let's not push people over the top. Let's challenge them to see what they can get done. Give them the feedback, keep encouraging them. And I think once people see the outputs over the first few weeks and months, no matter how small, they build on that. And that's the job of the lean practitioners, to help other people build on that. So I think that's a really good way of explaining it.
In the beginning, I and a couple of us had to really essentially drive the process to start. Towards the end of that development, more and more frequently, the users of those processes would approach me and say, I need to improve this process. I need some help documenting. Right. So that's when the culture shift has changed from we don't need no stupid processes to the processes are valuable. When they started booking time with me to actually help document the changes they wanted to make, okay, now we have a major shift in culture with minimal pushback, minimal resistance, even throughout all that time. And there was resistance in the beginning. Don't be wrong. You're always going to get right. And that's where a lean practitioner needs to understand. People are not going to want to just change what they've been doing for 10 years, right? And that's, to your point, Catherine, you got it exactly right. Bringing the people into the process from the beginning and helping them discover inefficiencies and things that aren't working well. If it's all their idea, that's brilliant, right? The minute they say, oh, I see the problem. Okay, there's the solution. My job as a Six Sigma guy, as a lean person, to say, great idea.
Right. So I'm curious. Let's continue with this this example with the company that you were working with. And the question I have is in regards to like leadership development and continuous improvement, or innovation. Can you have one without the other? I'm with your example. You mentioned the culture change that was with the the middle layer, the people that are actually doing the work. What kind of shifts needed to happen or did happen with the leadership? Did they come along with that culture change?
We took an interesting path. Once the company got to a certain size, again, a very brief story, the executive teams had read a couple of books and had conversations about a couple of leadership books and some interesting things. The executive group weren't super interested in continuing that process because I was fascinated with it. So I worked for the CEO at the time, and I said, "Is there any reason I shouldn't take this same basic process out to more people in the company?" And about 6 or 7 years ago, I started recruiting, inviting managers, line workers, other exec, different groups, and started doing leadership development based on, they affectionately called it the book club. They call it whatever they want. But at one point I had 35 or 40 employees out of 120, I think it was, involved in the leadership development program, right? What I had learned over the years is this: if enough people at all different levels in the organization and throughout the organization start to think like leaders, then they're going to start being more open to change and helping to drive change and to influence change in the organization. The continuous improvement and the innovation happened a lot easier the more people were learning the same basic principles about leadership and the personal change and all that goes with it. It became a lot easier to work with them, in part because we now had a common language and a common mindset. Leaders shouldn't, back to one of my other comments, leaders should never really be happy with the way an operation is functioning. They should be satisfied and enjoy the successes again. But they should always be looking toward the next improvement, the next change, the next thing, right? And if it cannot be just the upper leaders that have that mindset. Again, they're going to push against that resistance too much. So again, we put that process in place, and it was going very well. Where we just had all these different. Another nice side effect: they were always cross-functional, people that didn't work directly together often, and they were building relationships that benefited outside of the meetings. So no, I can't separate the two. The leadership of the organization is not. I'll put it this way: the leaders in the organization are not always defined by the organizational chart.
Yes,
that's great. And also, so I think what we need here also is a whole culture of leadership development, because what I see sometimes is some really good organizations who are really investing in leader development, who are picking key people and they're sending them off to develop them and get them coached and bring them up. It's not enough, especially for a lean organization where we want leaders at every single level, including, you mentioned earlier, frontline leaders, Dan. We got to send every single leader to be developed, not just the few key people. And also it's about, I know we haven't really touched on it much, but the ability to coach and facilitate, like, they're key lean leadership behaviors. And if we don't have leaders who can't do those things, then I don't think our lean efforts are going to go very far. So this whole approach to leadership development and this whole idea of distributed leadership, where it's not just one or two key senior individuals who have leadership abilities, but the ability for everybody to be able to lead, is just so important. So Dan, tell us, how do we do this? How do we get to this point where
how do we get there? Oh, fire up
the 5 steps that
simple 5-step.
Simple 5 steps going to be in your next book.
First, you buy yourself an ion rocket drive motor. You start the way it happened for me at my last company is it started with who was in front of me. All right, I just responded to a posting on LinkedIn. Leaders influence the people that are in front of them, right? But they influence them in a way that creates additional leaders. Right, and there's an exponential growth pattern that happens when you start developing leaders. That was a major function. I'm old enough and I'm far enough along my career. I need to really have a heavy focus on developing that next generation of leaders, because I'm not going to be doing it forever. So as a leader, my job was to inspire people to not just learn leadership, but teach leadership and coach and mentor other leaders. And we had some successes with that as well. Where do you start? You start where you're at. Now, I will tell you this, depending on how deep leadership issues go in the organization, the executive team or the current leadership might have to put themselves through a bit of a boot camp. I could not have mentored leaders in the organization had I not gone through the process, the transformational process that was required to give me credibility as a mentor, a leadership mentor. So you got to start it's an internal job for the leadership of an organization. If they're already there, that's great. If I was consulting, I'd say, why are you hiding it? You know, why are you not sharing this with your team, right? Let's get that process started. And in the program that we had, people had to kind of go through, it wasn't a formal qualification process, but they kind of had to go through me. They had to go through me to qualify to be in the program. I didn't take just everybody. You know, you're looking for certain traits and characteristics. You know, are they already self-starting? Are they already pursuing other things that are outside their job sphere? All that. But yeah, the leaders need to set the example, and if they're not setting the example, you got to start there. I wish there was a 5-step process, but
because I'm only at 2, I'm expecting 3 more.
Well, when you come up with them, email me, and then I'll give you credit in the book.
And if you could just stamp your all your initials on that, Jammy Jam. That'd be awesome.
Actually, your points are very, very valid, I think, Dan, because if everybody starts from where they're at, yes, but if the most senior people in the organization are starting from where they're at, and they're getting the support and the coaching to develop themselves, to be able to do all the things we talked about, like create psychological safety, develop humility, take ego out of it, do all the things that we know matters for lean leadership. If they're doing that and they're learning then through their own development how to coach other people, it's going to have a ripple effect. But I think that point of starting at the top is key here for leadership development. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I suppose in terms of some of those points that we made, we've dug into innovation and why it's important. We have dug into culture and the kind of culture that's needed to support, let's say, whether it's lean or agile or whatever quality methodology you use. We know that the culture obviously can make or break our efforts. And we've talked a little bit then about lean leadership and what that looks like and why it's so important to develop our leaders to be able to lead on these things and shape it, right? So in terms of just the final piece of that, the mindset piece, what are we looking to develop when it comes to leaders in terms of mindset, and maybe throw in behaviors there as well? What is it, Dan, do you think is really, really important in the people that we put in place to lead all of these efforts?
I would say behaviors are a direct result of mindset. And I don't know any other way to look at it. Mindset-wise, when we're looking for leaders, that's a great question. When we're looking for leaders, that mindset really needs to be somebody that has demonstrated the willingness to develop others without getting credit for it. People that are already making some kind of changes without executive prompting. People that are already taking personal accountability and action in their sphere of influence. One of the best ways to discover a leader, I'm going to attribute it wrong if I try. One of my favorite quotes, or one of my favorite definitions of leader is, the leader is the person who's in front. Right. But there's also a follow-up quote from another person I love, which is, any person that thinks they're a leader but has nobody following them is merely out for a walk. So what you can be looking for are people who seem to have followers already, even if they don't have any formal training. I mentioned it before, the curious 4-year-old mindset usually is pretty easy to identify. It's that person is the person in the meeting. The leader I'm looking for as well is the person who's in the meeting with the higher ups, who's going to ask the awkward question that nobody's supposed to ask. Right. This is the person that says, "Excuse me, I've got a question." I've done that a lot of times in my career, and then somebody will try to shush me. We don't. That's. Or, you know, this is one of my favorites. I use this all the time. Somebody says, well, everybody knows. Insert topic, right? And I'll look at them dead in the eye. And I've done this quite a few times. I look them dead in the eye. Well, I don't know. So why don't you tell me? And then truly everybody will know, because I'm the last of 8 billion people on the planet, apparently, that don't know this. It's a little snotty, but that it's that person that has that inquisitive mind and that level of curiosity that they're willing to act on. Those are some of the characteristics I'm looking for in a leader, a change leader.
I think curiosity, and I know we've actually spoken about it a few times, and it's up there in my top, if not number one trait of a great leader, because I think what curiosity does is it reduces the judgment that people feel on them in every situation. When a leader goes in with curiosity and asks a question instead of making a statement, a blatant statement, that builds trust and psychological safety. And that's what everything else is built on, isn't it? When it comes to lean and development and improvement and culture and everything else. So spot on, Dan. I think Shane, any thoughts?
I was gonna add one thing, but I'm also gonna watch to see, are they asking questions out of genuine curiosity, or are they asking questions to manipulate responses?
Sure.
So if they're genuinely curious, that means they're open to being, persuaded that their position is wrong.
Yeah.
That's a key differentiator for me. Sorry, Shane. I interrupted.
No. That is spot on as well. I really appreciate that, because I think the art of asking questions is kind of elusive, and I don't know. I don't have as many initials after my name. I again don't have all the plaques and everything. Haven't gone through all of that, but I haven't seen, and at least it doesn't register in my brain as a memory of seeing leadership training having as a component of it the art of asking questions, how to ask questions, and how to that idea of curiosity, leading with that curiosity, not just to either prove your point or to manipulate the system, but to ask the question, to truly understand, to truly expand the table and say, hey, what about? Tell me more. Help me understand, and just expand whatever those possibilities are. It just blowing those doors open. I again, this is just me. I don't have all of the exposure to all the great leadership training out there. So I just think that's a great thing.
That's a great thing. I've been working with a consulting company to help develop a leadership training program for their company, for their clients. I'm going to bring that question to the guy I'm working with and say, do we add some component? How do we create this inquisitive mindset?
Right.
I'll tell you what I had to do, because when I first started out as a lean consultant, I very quickly figured out that I had the ability to understand a process, but I didn't have the ability to coach a person or coach the leaders who actually, when I left that day, were going to be in charge of everything. So I had to go back and I had to do a coaching course. I'm so glad I did. It was the best course I ever did. But the course I did was leadership and executive coaching. And I have to say that I probably draw on that in every single interaction as a lean consultant. And I wouldn't even hesitate to say that every single leader should go off, not be a coach, but get coaching skills. I 100% believe that.
And it kind of brings us back to the beginning of our conversation where this all started, is we always have to remember that as experts in our area, in our area of specialty, lean and otherwise, we need to understand that in order to get anything done, we're going to be working with people.
Mm-hmm.
And the better we are at knowing how to work with people and influence their actions, questions is a great way. Get them thinking, get them questioning things. The better we are at that, the better we can affect the change on the organization that we need.
Yeah. So many great things. And I feel like we just started this conversation, Dan, but we learned about rockets. There's so many things that we've applied, but we are running, really tight on time here. Is there any last things that you would want to share in regards to innovation, in regards to culture, in regards to leadership mindset, with our listening audience?
Stay curious, stay open. and never assume you have all the answers. Ask all the questions. Your job as a lean expert really is to ask the right questions in the right order so that you get the people you're working with thinking about things in a way that's different than the way they have for the last 10 years. Be curious.
Yeah, and I love that, because it's not, I'm going to tell you how to improve. It's, let me start asking questions so you can see this process or this problem or this whatever differently. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens, because then the wisdom, collective wisdom of the room, of the people that are doing, doing the work, then that just like engages for them to be able to go, oh, hey, what if?
Being curious is less threatening, and it also acknowledges the people's expertise.
Sure.
Yeah. It's complimentary.
Catherine, what about you? Anything that you would add before we wrap up?
I just think that has been a fantastic conversation. I just love this topic. It's just so important. We do talk about people a lot and leadership of people when it comes to lean. And there's lots of different elements to lean, but this is most definitely, lean won't be of any effect in our organizations if we don't work on this area. So it's highly important. And Dan, you've just given us some great insights there into innovation and culture and leadership. So thank you for that. It's been fantastic.
My pleasure. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
In the show notes, we will have your LinkedIn profile connection and anything that you've given us, so that if people want to connect with you, they'll be able to.
Super.
So thank you so much, Dan, for being a part of this and giving us. Maybe we'll be able to come back and talk again about the next iteration of rockets, or how it all plays together. You never know.
Thank you,
Catherine. It is always a pleasure getting to hang out with you. Thanks so much as well. And to our listening audience, whether you're watching or you're listening, it's been fun. We hope you've also enjoyed it. Have a great day.